Many Russian stocks have rallied 60% so far this year. Poland's the underperformer, up just 5% so far in 2009. Well, here's some news for you. And China is no longer the cheapest place to make goods. This according to AlixPartners, which is a business advisory firm, and their manufacturing outsourcing cost index shows that Mexico now is the most cost-efficient place to produce goods. India is placed in second, and China coming third in their rankings. Now, Ivo Naumann is a managing director at AlixPartners and also the author of the report. Good morning to you, Ivo. Thank you so much for joining us today. Let's talk about Mexico overtaking China and India to take the #1 spot. Is it just the currencies? Because, as you mentioned, the yuan has gained 20% since its depegging.
Right. It's really a whole host of issues what we've seen here. And then probably just stepping back for a moment, why we looked at that, we really looked at it from two aspects. What we wanted to understand is, on the one hand, what is it best for U.S. companies and where to source their products. On the other hand, we wanted to understand in what shape are Chinese exporters. And so what we looked at is really, okay, over a 5-year period, how have these factors changed? And obviously the currency valuation is enormous swing. What you've seen, of course, in the last 3 years, the Chinese yuan has appreciated by over 15%, and while at the same time, just in the last 12 months, the Mexican peso has gone down by 30%, so that alone makes a huge impact. What we also have seen, and I think that's going to be an important factor going forward, is, and that's almost more important, is really the shortness of the supply chain. What you see is, in this economic environment where a lot of the companies in the United States really have absolutely no visibility, how is demand on their side developing? Right now, there's a ton of companies in the United States who are preparing for the Christmas season on the consumer product side, and they don't really know what the consumer spending is going to be like this year. And so what they need is, they need enormously short ordering cycles. Now, if you order from China, that gives you a 4 to 5 week shipping time just alone for that. So that's very hard to do if you really have no visibility what consumer spending is going to be like. So in order to do that, they are really looking at more locations that are closer to them. And the last piece of that is really where to come from in terms of trade agreements. Now, with Mexico being in the NAFTA area and China being outside of that one, that is really something where U.S. companies are looking at, as Mexico is a good place to manufacture. Yeah, well, Mexico is ahead of India. Doesn't the language factor come in at some point, because India is an English-speaking country? We have actually not seen that the language is one of the major factors, and what we have really seen more is costs, plus what you really also need is the right supply base in that sense. What is, however, speaking again in favor of Mexico, is closeness, where a Mexican buyer can really fly his own engineers into the country and work with the supplier there. Now, that's very easy to do in Mexico, because, you know, it's a 2 or 3 hour flight from most places in the United States. While going to China or to India, that's a much bigger problem there. And is the rankings the same for, say, higher end products, these high-tech, high-technology manufacturing processes? Right. It's basically, I think what you see is really somewhat of a rethinking of your supply chain. Number one, people in the United States are right now looking at, buyers in the United States are looking at, okay, what is the length of the supply chain that I can afford? Number two is, what is the labor content? Labor content in the sense of being higher labor content stays in China, lower labor content goes closer to the United States. So in a sense, yes, higher value-added products move back to the United States or to Mexico or places closer to that, while the rest stays out here in Asia, where you can also afford long supply chains. Now, what the interesting piece of all of that is, what does that really mean for Chinese exporters? What we have, of course, seen, if you think about it, still, so far, there's not a massive downturn in exports from China, and I think what has happened, Chinese exporters are willing to forego profit margin at the moment. We are working with clients out here in China who have basically half their profit margins and basically pass on their labor cost disadvantage that has occurred over the years, and the currency disadvantage over the years, eat up, reduce their profit margin, and basically keep the same cost competitiveness. Now, that cannot go on forever. At some point, there's no more profit left for Chinese exporters, and then they will actually have to stop exporting to the United States. China no longer the #1 place to outsource manufacturing. Thank you for that, Ivo. Ivo Naumann of AlixPartners with his new report and study. Let's move it on, and Kathy Yang joins us now for a preview of what's to come.